Coming up on Locked On Dodgers, bad news out of LA. Julio Urías was arrested again for domestic violence. And this is probably the end of his time with the Dodgers, which in the cases of domestic violence, what he does for work is probably the least important thing, but it's the part that we as a Dodgers podcast have to talk about. So we will talk about what this means for him, for the Dodgers this year and in the future, and probably talk a lot about how disappointed we are in the whole situation. So that's what's on tap. So let's get Locked On Dodgers.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Dodger fans, this is Locked On Dodgers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. Remember, this show is free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube simply by searching for Locked On Dodgers. Or even better, go and subscribe wherever you're watching or listening right now. Then you can be an everydayer just like we are. If this is your first time with us, I am Jeff Snider. My co-host is Vince Samperio. Vince and I are both lifelong Dodger fans just like you are. We've also both spent time covering the Dodgers in the press box and the locker room. So we're not quite insiders, but we bring you the smart fans perspective on our boys in blue every weekday morning. This episode is brought to you by Sleeper. Swing for the fences on Sleeper Picks, and you could win up to 100 times your money. Download the Sleeper app and use promo code LOCKEDON, and you'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Currently operational in over 30 states. Check out Sleeper today. And today is not an enjoyable episode to have to do. I guess let's start by stating the obvious. Julio Urías was, I can't even pronounce it. I always just call him Julio, but I don't want to sound like I'm on a first name basis with him today. So that guy was arrested for domestic violence, I believe, at an LAFC soccer game. And chances are his time with the Dodgers is over. In the case of domestic violence, the effect on the Dodgers isn't nearly the most important thing about it, but it is the part that we are qualified to talk about. And so let's start by saying, if you need any help with domestic violence, you can contact the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 800-799-7233 or at thehotline.org. And please understand that while we are talking about the baseball ramifications of all of this, we understand that this is a lot bigger than baseball, and our disappointment in all of this and frustration and anger is a lot bigger than baseball. But like I said, the baseball side is the part that we are qualified to talk about. And so that's what we're going to do. But just know there's an underlying, we understand how serious this is. It sucks, right, Vince?
Yeah, I mean, not the thing you ever want to see in general. Definitely not the thing you want to see for the Dodgers, and just put a weird mood the rest. I mean, you're in a weird mood the rest of the day. Obviously we don't know. I've talked to Julio a couple times, but we don't know him personally. It's more, just someone as we've watched him. I mean, we've known who he was for about 12 years now, since he was 16 when the Dodgers first signed him. Now 18, and we went through this already in 2019 when he was arrested on a misdemeanor domestic violence charge, and that situation was, he did get suspended. We went through this whole process already, and it was awkward at the time. And, awkward in the sense of like us, having to talk about it and, all that kind of stuff. And like you said, it's obviously there are bigger issues at hand beyond the baseball part of it. We're understanding of that. And, we're here to talk about our side of it, which is the baseball side of it. But yeah, I mean, obviously not great to be part of. And you don't feel great about it's not the Dodgers' fault, but you don't feel great about just the whole situation. Fabian Ardaya and some of the people from the Athletic. So this was the official. They had the official thing as arrested on a suspicion of a felony charge of corporal injury on a spouse. He was arrested at 11:09 p.m. Pacific time by Exposition Park Police and booked around 1 a.m. on Monday morning by LAPD jail. Released on $50,000 bond later that morning on Monday morning. And it's been reported that his next court date is September 27th. MLB is already investigating this situation. The Dodgers released a statement, quote, "We were aware of it of an incident involving Julio Urías. While we attempt to learn all the facts, he will not be traveling with the team. The organization has no further comment at this time. Scott Boras, who is Julio's agent, did not return a call from the Athletic for a comment. So yeah, all that is, the general stuff. And yeah, obviously, we've gone through this before, again, not just with Julio, but with Bauer. And, at least this time people understand that the Dodgers kid just can't outright release him. There's a due process that has to happen. And that's what we're going to go through now. But even, best case scenario for everybody involved, it would still probably see Julio have thrown his last pitch for the Dodgers, just because any investigation is going to take at least a month, and that's all that's left in the regular season.
Yeah, and it's, even though we all understand it a little bit better now, that didn't stop Bill Plaschke from writing his grandstanding article saying the Dodgers cannot allow Julio to ever pitch for them again. It's not up to them. And I know not everybody watched when I went.
Technically, after this season, it would be up to them.
Yeah, exactly. But right now, the Dodgers can't do anything. But the thing is, Major League Baseball is not going to allow Julio. Like, Julio was scheduled to pitch on Thursday, I think. That's not going to happen. He will be, he didn't even travel with the team, but he will be put on administrative leave very, very soon. It makes sense, just like with the Bauer situation, makes sense for them to put it off as long as possible, just because the initial administrative leave is 10 days. And then after that, they have to get extensions and all that. And so there is no point in them putting him on administrative leave on Tuesday, or on Monday, which is a day off anyway, and they might not even do it until Thursday when he was technically scheduled to pitch. But either way, he's not going to pitch this week, and that has nothing to do with anything that any reporter wrote demanding that he not pitch this week. It's just the way it works. And it'll be interesting to see, because, when we did go through this with Bauer, I laid out all the rules that basically the league, the domestic violence policy that the league and the players union agreed to together. It says, I'm going to read you a little bit. It says, initial authority to discipline players for events that include violations of this policy shall repose with the commissioner's office. The commissioner's office will retain authority to discipline players under this policy until it provides the Players Association and the player with notice that it is transferring such authority to the club. If the commissioner's office does not transfer its authority, no club may take any disciplinary or adverse action against a player arising from an incident involving a covered act. What that means is teams are not allowed to discipline players for domestic violence. That lies solely with the league. Now, it is a little bit of a gray area what constitutes discipline, because with Trevor Bauer, I don't think it was that gray, because he was the reigning Cy Young Award winner at the time. He was owed a lot of money for the next couple of years. There was no legitimate baseball reason to cut a guy. It would have been clearly a punishment for the domestic violence charge, or the sexual assault charge in his case. By the time things were cleared and the Dodgers did release him, he hadn't pitched in the big leagues in over a year. And so there was reasonable baseball reasons, I think, to get away with that. But when Starlin Castro in 2021 was charged with domestic violence, the Nationals were able to just cut him. And I don't know if the difference was the time and money remaining on the contract, because it was near the end of the season. And he was only under contract that year, not for very much. I don't know if it was just that he wasn't a good player anymore. And so, so I don't really know where that gray area is. And maybe it was just because the union decided not to fight that one. But there may be an option here for the Dodgers to just release Julio. Since contract wise, it's actually less time left than Castro had on his. But, chances are what we'll see is he will be on administrative leave and or suspension the rest of the season. And then the Dodgers won't re-sign him, and maybe nobody else will either, depending on what the investigation turns up.
Yeah.
So, that's kind of the bare bones, nuts and bolts of what's going on with Julio. We're going to come back in a minute. We're going to talk about what this means for the Dodgers the rest of this season and postseason. And then later what it means for them in the future, since it means they probably won't be re-signing him. So that's what we'll get to. So please Keep it locked on Dodgers. This episode is brought to you by Sleeper. MLB playoffs are around the corner, which means the clock is ticking on your chance to get 100 times your cash on daily fantasy baseball. Baseball has never been more exciting than it is now with studs like Ronald Acuna, Mookie Betts, and Shohei Ohtani. Pick more or less on stats for these stars like home runs, hits, strikeouts, and more for up to 100 times payout on Sleeper. Get your picks right, and you could win big. If you think that Freddie Freeman is going to break out of his little mini slump tonight, well, you should play this Sleeper daily fantasy baseball, and you can pick Freddie Freeman and just pick him to go great. Or if you think, Ronald Acuna is going to go into a slump, pick less on him. Whatever you want to do, baseball, use that knowledge to play fantasy baseball and maybe get a chance to make some money. And use promo code Locked On, and you'll get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. We are back. We want to thank you again for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. We want to thank especially our everydayers, those of you who are with us every weekday morning. We love talking Dodgers with you. We appreciate you. If you are watching this on YouTube, we'd love to hear your thoughts in the YouTube comment section. Try to keep it, civil. I know we're all frustrated and upset about this situation, but let's not take it out on each other. And remember, the Dodgers do start a series with the Marlins today in Miami. The game starts while you're probably still at work. So if you can't be watching on TV, you could be listening on the radio, the Dodgers radio broadcast on Sirius XM or the SXM app. And we'd love to hear from you, your thoughts after we get done giving you our thoughts. So Vince, it feels a little bit icky to be talking about the baseball ramifications of this. So maybe we'll acknowledge that at the beginning of each segment. But from a baseball standpoint, Julio was kind of a big question mark the rest of the year anyway, because he struggled so badly. He struggled really badly against the Braves the other day, just, wasn't able to get the outs, and he's had a lot of clunkers. His season this year hasn't come remotely close to matching what he did the last 2 years when he was a Cy Young contender. And he was going to be, this next few weeks was going to really determine what his role was going to be in the postseason. Julio has been a postseason number one starter quality the last couple of years, but this year that wasn't the case. And I think, especially if they get to the NLCS against the Braves, we talked the other day about how it might have made sense for him to not even be one of the top couple starters. And maybe they go with the youth and the fireballers instead. This obviously forces the Dodgers' hand, because I think we can safely assume that Julio will not be pitching in the postseason for the Dodgers. And while it might end up being a blessing in disguise from a baseball standpoint, there's not really any easy answers as far as who takes that spot.
Yeah, there's a lot of answers. There's maybe not, like you said, not an easy answer. And, to the overall, I've seen obviously different opinions and thoughts and takes, and, talked to a few people today. And, from the grand scheme of things, as it presently stands, it didn't really change the Dodgers' odds any, obviously maybe a little bit less than they were, a little bit tougher of a go now. But just from what we've seen from Julio this year, it doesn't really change too much, because you don't know what you were going to get out of him. You don't know if you were going to get 7 innings, 2 runs allowed, or if you were going to get 4 innings and 6 runs allowed. Like you didn't really know. So from that perspective, and that part of it, it doesn't change a whole lot. I do think, like you said, blessing in disguise, in the sense of some of these younger arms might get the chance now. And, Julio was once one of those guys that got a chance and took advantage of it. And, unfortunately now it's not that time for him. But, there's other guys that are here. And we were just talking about the other day how there was going to be some difficult decisions that had to be made, just based on, how many guys might come back, how many guys are already healthy, how many guys they already have, and all that kind of stuff. And, I saw people saying, oh, now they need Walker Buehler to come back. I don't, like I said, if the only thing that happens today is that Julio is not on the playoff roster, then the Dodgers don't have any panic. I don't think there's any huge change other than who's throwing game 1 or 2 after or before Kershaw. I think that's the only big difference. And obviously we're going to have to find that out. And over this last month, that's something they're going to do. And, maybe this opens up more of those piggyback situations or, dual starter, Yarbrough and somebody else or Pepiot and somebody else. That might open up something like that. And, it might end up being a more efficient and better use of the Dodgers roster that way. For the rest of the regular season, they can get by with, they have a bunch of starters to, plug in anybody, Sheehan, Pepiot, Michael Gross will come back next weekend. He probably won't be worked up to be a starter, but they have enough arms to cover the innings the rest of this regular season. And when it comes to October, it might just be a matter where they just mixing and matching a lot more than they would have before.
Yeah, Ryan Pepiot can't be called up yet. Unless somebody goes on the injured list. I did check, and there's no suspension exception there. It's only he has to be down for 15 days unless he's replacing injured player or the 27th man during a doubleheader, or in this case, 29th man, since the rosters have expanded 28. But yeah, even without Julio, you look at what the Dodgers have as far as starting pitching options, starting or bulk pitching options in the postseason. You got Kershaw and Bobby Miller, Lance Lynn, Ryan Pepiot, Emmett Sheehan, maybe Walker Buehler, Ryan Yarbrough, and maybe Michael Grove if he gets built up, and maybe Gavin Stone. He's pitched really well. So that's 9 guys right there. We won't have all 9 of them on a postseason roster, but we could definitely see them carrying 6 of those guys and having, only planning on using 3 of them as starters, or, maybe carrying 7 and having, Kershaw be a real starter and everybody else be hey, give us what you can, and then we'll piggyback, because you can handle only having 6 relievers if you're getting, 7, 8, 9 innings from your piggyback situation each game. It would definitely be a new approach to the postseason, but with the guys they have, and there's question marks around all these guys. Just like there was going to be around Julio. Lance Lynn has big question marks. The most of the other guys besides Lance Lynn, it's question marks of, youth, experience, stamina, those kind of things. But there's question marks nonetheless. And so taking that kind of approach could give you a little bit of insurance. Okay, we only got 3 innings from Emmett Sheehan in this game. Don't worry, we can get 4 innings from Ryan Yarbrough, and we're not going to blow up the bullpen, that sort of thing. I don't know, but it was, in a way, I'm relieved that they don't have to make the decision about how to use Julio, because there is a history, not just with the Dodgers, but all major league teams, of, deferring to the veteran, not enough of a "what have you done for me lately" attitude when it comes to the postseason. And really, the postseason should very much be a "what have you done for me lately?" Not as far as I don't believe in the hot hand, but how good are you right now is what that should be the calculus when you're determining who's pitching for you in the postseason. And I was worried that they were going to have, well, Julio closed out the 2020 World Series for us. He's been with us forever. We don't want to hurt his feelings, in case we want to re-sign him. All of that stuff was going to go into the decision. Now none of that has to go into the decision, and they can do more of a, how good are you right now? What pitching staff gives us the best chance to win the World Series? And while that seems obvious, most teams aren't usually in a situation to take that approach to their postseason pitching staff, and the Dodgers maybe are now a little bit more able to do that.
Yeah, and it's a little bit, slight shift from what we've seen other teams do, recently, where they just don't have good start. Like the starters only go 3-4 innings because they're not that good, and you just want to get them one time through a lineup and then go to your bullpen, because you have a bunch of bullpen arms that have, sometimes a day off every other day or something like that. And, it's a lot easier to do it. We've seen teams. That's why it's always funny to me when people are like, oh, the Dodgers don't have the starting pitching to win a World Series. Like, what team's rotation, other than the Nationals, and that was 2 guys, that carried them. But, the rotation never really stands out, at least not recently, of all these teams. It's usually one guy steps up, the bullpen steps up, the offense has clutch hits. It's always like that. It's not, even when like back when the Giants were winning, that one year they had old Jake Peavy, he was going like 3 innings a start basically. And, they still won. It's possible.
Yeah. Off the top of my head, the last World Series champion I can think of who relied on starting pitching to do it was the 2005 White Sox. And 2005 was a long time ago. Like Vince was still in diapers. He was in diapers till he was 14, just so you guys know. And I hardly had any gray hair yet at that point. So that was a long time ago. So, from a baseball standpoint, I don't think this hurts the Dodgers that much this year. And moving forward, we'll come back in a minute and we'll talk about what it means for them in the future. And unfortunately, it might be a blessing in disguise there too. So thanks for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen, and please keep it Locked On Dodgers. Hey, we're back. We want to thank you again for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. Want to remind you can catch today's Dodger game and every Dodger game, the Dodgers radio broadcast on SiriusXM or the SXM app, just by searching for Dodgers. You can also listen to this podcast on the SXM app by searching for Locked On Dodgers. We want to thank our everydayers for being with us every day. If you're not an everydayer, it's a super easy club to join. Just watch or listen every weekday morning or pretty close to it and call yourself an everydayer. We're not going to check your podcasting history. So we'll believe you. And again, we'd love to hear your thoughts in the YouTube comment section or on social media if you're not watching on YouTube. And again, we just ask you to keep those comments civil and recognize that all of us as Dodger fans, we didn't cause this problem. And so let's be nice to each other about this. And one more reminder that we are talking about the baseball implications of this, but we recognize that domestic violence is a very serious thing that is much bigger than baseball. And unfortunately, we are everydayers. We do have to talk about the Dodgers implications of this, but you will notice if you're watching on YouTube, we've had the National Domestic Violence Hotline scrolling across the bottom of the screen this entire episode. There is help available if you need it. And so their website's there, the phone number's there. Please get help if you need it, and be strong. So back to the baseball implications of this. Julio is going to be a free agent at the end of the season. He was coming into this year, he was expected to be, basically the biggest non-Ohtani name on the free agent market. And then Julio's struggles have tempered that a little bit, but I think he was still going to be a very big name on the free agent market. And there was a lot of question about whether the Dodgers would re-sign him. And, there's been people wanting them to extend him, which was never really realistic, just because Scott Boras is his agent, not because Boras makes the decisions, but because players who are interested in signing hometown discount extensions don't hire Scott Boras as their agent. And so it was probably unlikely anyway that the Dodgers were going to re-sign him. And now I'd say the chances are roughly zero. And the chances of any team signing him, it depends a lot on what this investigation shows. But, it's worth noting, felony domestic violence that's what he was charged with. And they don't just throw around these charges willy-nilly. Felony domestic violence means one person has caused serious physical injury or harm to any other resident of the same household. And so it's the degree of harm caused. And so the fact that they went with felony domestic violence, remember, like Vince mentioned earlier, when he was arrested 4 years ago, that was a misdemeanor. And that charge, what he was accused of doing was pushing down his then girlfriend in a parking lot. What both of them, he and she, said happened was that he grabbed her wrist and she slipped and fell down. But with an actual, what they arrested him for was pushing her down, and that was a misdemeanor. And so what we're talking about here is he's being charged with something quite a bit more serious than pushing her down in a parking lot, and which is already very serious. And so, what this investigation, MLB's investigation, and the LAPD's investigation, what that all turns up will have a big impact on what his future is in baseball. It's not crazy at all to think that his time in baseball might be done, and he might not get any suitors on the free agent market this coming off season. But I'd say, Vince, in my opinion at least, I'd say there's zero chance the Dodgers try to re-sign him.
Yeah, it's one of those where, fool me once, shame on, you, or whatever. Well, actually, I guess it wouldn't be that way. But either way, he had, the Dodgers kept him around after the first one, after showing somewhat of a strong stance around these types of allegations before. With the Aroldis Chapman, they didn't go after him after, they found out what happened with him and, that incident. So they allowed him, whatever it was, whether it's because it was just the situation or, the fact that there was no video, that kind of stuff maybe played a factor into it, or the fact that they had him for so long. And whatever it was, he got his second chance. The Dodgers, maybe couldn't have let him go right then and there. I don't know what the CBA was back then, but they might have. They would have been able to get rid of him if they wanted to, and they didn't. But now it's happened twice. I don't, I guess arrested, charged. There's a lot of different legal terms here that are, some people are going to try to use, in a sense of proven guilty and all that type of stuff. But like you said, you don't get charged for this just because, hearsay or anything else. Like for felony and for the specific wording that they used from the Athletic was corporal injury on a spouse. That means you have to have some type of visible injury, laceration, bruising, something like that. If I'm not mistaken. So there's something visual that's on her that you can see that caused them to arrest him for that. So yeah, I don't see it being a time with the Dodgers, realistically, in terms of being in the MLB or in MLB. There are guys that have gotten by after one chance, but there hasn't been anyone that's had this issue twice. And if there has, I don't think there would still be in the league or are still in the league if there was.
Yeah, none that I can think of. And I do think the Dodgers did the right thing in 2019 by standing by him and helping him. I think their goal was to help him mature. He and his girlfriend had the same story as to what happened. The legal authorities seem to agree with that assessment, and the Dodgers, helped him to try to mature and learn from it and become a better person. And, if what he's currently being accused of is true, then maybe that was a failure, but it doesn't mean it was wrong for them to try. And yeah, from a legal standpoint, no, he hasn't been convicted of anything. Maybe he hasn't even been officially charged. Being arrested and being charged are different things. I haven't
seen charged anywhere. I've seen
arrested, so he's been arrested. But so it's still up to the district attorney, I guess, whether to charge him. But being arrested for felony domestic violence is a big deal. And we may or may not ever find out the full details of what happened, but those details will be very important to teams that are considering signing him. And like you said, the fact that it's happened twice, even if he doesn't get charged, I think teams are going to be really wary of trying to go after him and paying him a lot of money. So it's from a human standpoint, it sucks that he can ruin his life in one day. But it sucks a lot more for the person who he abused. And it sucks, the abuser is not the victim in this situation or any situation. And we as the fans aren't the victims either. We talk about how much it sucks for us as Dodger fans, as baseball fans. None of us are the victim, and it sucks the most for the victim, and we recognize that. And it's just a crappy situation all around. I feel like I've said all I want to say about it. Vince, you have anything else that we need to say about this?
No, I got nothing else right now.
All right, I need to go take a shower or something. Yeah. We do want to thank all of you for being here for this. So I know that this probably isn't the most pleasant episode to listen to. We hope we treated it with the respect that it deserves. And again, reach out for help if you are the victim or know a victim of domestic violence. The resources are there, 800-799-SAFE or the hotline.org. and all the other stuff. Thanks for being an everydayer. Remember to listen to the Dodgers radio broadcast on SiriusXM or the SXM app by searching for Dodgers. You can follow us on Instagram and on Twitter at Locked On Dodgers. Vince is on Twitter at VinceSince91. I'm on Twitter at Snydog. DMs are open for both of us on Twitter. You can email us, lockeddodgers@gmail.com, or leave us a voicemail or shoot us a text at 323-863-LOCK5625. We are here every weekday morning, and we hope you'll be here with us. When you get in your car or sit on your couch, tell your smart device to play podcast Locked On Dodgers. And remember, you don't have to agree. You just have to listen. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
Have a good one.